Have you ever heard the phrase, never let them see you sweat? It's not something you heard a motivational coach give, or even a line out of a movie. In fact, it's from an underarm deodorant commercial, where they would show people on high-pressured moments who remain calm, confident, and unshaken. And then they would hit you with this tagline, never let them see you sweat. Now, if you don't know what that means, it simply means don't show stress, don't show fear, don't show pain. Just go out there and make no excuses and perform. Now, many of us can relate to a never let them see you sweat moment in your life. Like the day Johnny and his crew decided they wanted to steal my skateboard, but I wasn't giving it up that day. As I walked to the field house, I must have took like 10 punches to the head, probably to the head, the stomach, and the kneecap. I couldn't even figure out where these punches were coming from. And then I heard, "Hey, Benny, is that you?" Of course, I couldn't make out where it was coming from because I didn't know which direction I was in. And then they said, "Oh, leave him alone. He's on my team." Talk about pressure. I couldn't fight back. There's 10 kids. I couldn't get angry, and I felt embarrassed. But I couldn't let those boys see me sweat. That pressure, it felt like shaking a bottle of soda and then cracking it open. You know what happens next, right? Boom! Once that bottle has been shaken, the pressure just doesn't disappear. It waits for a place to escape. I remember the day that I was shaking. I was open, and I was looking for a place to escape. I was only 9 years old. While sitting in a school assembly, I began to listen to a speaker talk about the difference between a good touch and a bad touch. The more she spoke, the more I realized she was actually speaking about me. I listened to every word she said, and then she made the call out. If you've ever had a bad touch experience or been violated, please come to the counselor's office. We would like to speak to you. In that moment, I sank into my seat. I felt vulnerable and exposed. My face began to get hot because just 3 years earlier, I had a bad touch experience. Somebody my family trusted crossed the boundary. I remember walking back to the classroom with my head down, can't shake what I just heard and what I was just feeling. And so I sit down in my seat, and then I raise my hand. And I asked the teacher quietly, "Can I go see the counselor?" She gave me a hall pass, and I walked down the hallway. I knocked on the door, and the counselor opened the door with the speaker standing there waiting for the next child to come in. I don't remember everything that happened or what I said or how long I was in that office, but I remember them telling me, "We're going to need to notify your parents." And then they sent me back to my class. Shortly thereafterwards, I get called to the front office. "Benny, your mom is here to pick you up." I remember seeing my mom and feeling glad. My kids like that. They like when I pick them up early. But I don't know if that day how I felt. Because as we walked back to the car, it was a quiet walk. I couldn't tell what she was thinking or what she was feeling. But as soon as we got in the car, my mom looked over at me in her Latina tone that only can comfort a 9-year-old. She said, "Mijo, are you okay?" I looked up at my mom and said, "Mom, I'm okay." She says, "Mijo, did she do this to you?" I said, "Yeah, she did this to me." She says, "Mijo, are you sure she did this to you?" I said, "Mom, I'm sure she did this to me." She said, "Okay." And we never talked about it again until I was an adult. Now, I got to tell you, my mother did address this issue with this woman, both verbally and physically. We call that street justice. But we never had contact with that woman ever again. And while I still had questions that needed to be answered and feelings that went unaddressed, I realized that my emotional and sexual wires got crossed very early. I quickly learned how to keep pressure on the inside without exploding on the outside. I was literally living out the phrase, "Never let them see you sweat." And over time, masculinity became a pressure point for me. Not just the pressure to succeed, but the pressure to stay silent. I would unpack 3 pressures: the internal, the external, and the eternal. The eternal pressure is the pressure that we feel that builds up on the inside of us. It's the kind of pressure where you feel like you're carrying something heavy and you feel like you have to carry it all by yourself. Growing up as a young boy, we never talked about sexual abuse, especially when the perpetrator was a woman. See, as men, as we get older, we take pressure and we try to put it into words, but we don't know how to because we're afraid of how it's going to make us look. As we get older, we try to use so strong and be fierce on the outside, and yet we're suffering in silence on the inside. And the challenge with this pressure is that it just doesn't go away. It actually leaks. This pressure leaks in anger, it leaks in silence, and it leaks in numbness. I remember the day that I raised my hand and asked to go see that teacher. What I was doing was asking to relieve the pressure. See, I decided I wasn't going to build a wall around me, but I was going to build a strong will inside of me. Which leads me to the second type of pressure, which is the external pressure. And the external pressure is the pressure we feel when what happens to us gets reinforced by the world. I remember feeling this pressure the day after I disclosed what happened. I was walking out of the school building, and I heard 2 kids. I don't know why these kids are always picking on me. "Ha ha, we know what happened to you." 2 hall monitors saw me go into the counselor's office. I didn't see them, but they saw me. When I heard them laughing, it was like shame grabbing the microphone and speaking so loud that it confirmed my fears that if people knew, I would be judged. If people knew, I would be exposed. If people knew, I would be blamed. I gotta tell you, you know what my offender told me? She says, "If you ever tell your parents, they will be mad at you." But what she never told me was that if people found out, that they would laugh at you. See, dealing with external pressure is the big reason why us men don't open up and share what's going on in our lives. It's not just because we're afraid of the pain or to admit the pain. We're afraid of what's going to happen after we admit the pain. And so we're told, man up. Big boys don't cry. Don't act like a girl. Don't be so sensitive. And we learn this from friends, family, siblings, uncles, teammates, and classmates. And so we learn a strategy to hide and not heal, to perform and fake it till we make it. All while like we're wearing this mask. I call it masculinity. It's when we learn to hide behind a false idea of manhood because we don't want people to see what's really going on underneath the surface. And here's the cost, is that if we don't process the internal noise, we will live in the external silence. But then there's a third pressure, which is the eternal pressure. And the eternal pressure is one that calls us towards purpose. Not the kind to impress people, but the kind to become whole. I remember experiencing this while I was working for the electric company. And the only way to move, I was a meter reader, by the way. Shout out to the meter readers. But I remember the only way to move up in the company was to go to a 5-day pre-climb school. Don't ask me why I said yes. I hate electricity. I could barely screw in a light bulb. But I accepted the challenge. On day 3, they tell you have a big challenge and you have to climb a 60-foot pole. They give you these things called gaffs that go around your legs. I got a harness on the back. And these gaffs have spikes so that when you climb the tree, you can dig in so you don't slip. So I get on that pole, day 3, I look at that thing. That thing was so high, it was shaking like this. I still don't know why I said yes. But I start climbing this pole and I gaff out. I slip. I grabbed the whole of that pole and all I remember is it felt like eternity, and I was sliding down the pole as I'm watching my shirt rip and my jeans rip, and I'm watching blood now start trickling down and splinters all in my arm. Talk about never let them see you sweat. It was more like never let them see you die. I thought it was over for me. But I climbed down the rest of the way, and I was getting ready to call it quits. And so I walked into this office. Now I was in control of how I got to that office. And I walked in that office and I said, I quit. I'm not doing this anymore. It's not for me. It's not my calling. The instructor looked at me and he said, Benny, you're almost there. Come back tomorrow. Now, I don't know what happened in those 12, 14 hours over the night, but I decided to drive back the following day. And on day 5, I climbed that 60-foot pole, got all the way to the top, walked around it with my safety belt, and I passed pre-climb school. Not because I was fearless, but because I refused to give in to the eternal pressure of failure and disappointment. You see, for years, I've tried to mask my weaknesses so that I could appear strong. When really all I wanted to do was to not quit on life, was to climb high and reach my potential. But that's what external pressure and eternal pressure will do for you. It doesn't demand performance, it demands honesty. It will turn your pain into purpose and give you a vision to live for. So here's what I believe now. That the goal was never to be a man who never lets them see you sweat. The goal was to be a man who never had to hide from pressure. Now, I understand that every man has to work this out on their own. Pressure looks different for all of us. And there will come a time when you will need to figure out your masculinity and your pressure points. For me, it started with silence. Today, it put me on the biggest stage, making the loudest noise. And so here's my ask. Gentlemen, are you ready to remove the mask and release the pressure? Maybe it's one honest therapy session. Maybe it's one honest conversation. Maybe it's you raising your hand and saying, I need help. Are you ready to take the internal, external, and eternal pressures on before it shatters you? To the young man, raise your voice and speak up, not in anger or fear, but in courage, and ask for help. To the older man, heal and help those with your message of masculinity, because I believe your best days are still ahead. It's time to remove the mask, release the pressure, and embrace masculinity when it becomes a pressure point for you.
What?